Day 2 of Operation Below the Belt in Israel. I'm sorry, in Lebanon, concerning the war between Israel and Iran, basically. I'm Chuck Holton. How's it going? I'm coming to you from Armenia, and I am tracking the changes that are happening in Israel. And we got a lot to talk about. There's breaking news happening right now. They're saying another wave of, okay, now, again, just as a caveat, I've got to be very careful about what I say. I managed last night to get through the entire live and not get it demonetized. So whatever my euphemisms that are being used are apparently working. And so I'm going to have to continue with that until such a time as we can figure out some better way of going about this. I'm not trying to make light of what's happening. I'm trying to keep from getting the video demonetized for using any kind of violent language. And so just understand that if I'm saying that somebody took the express train to Smithereens, you know what I'm getting at. And I'm, again, not trying to be funny or cute. I'm just trying to outwit the algorithm, which is really a pain to have to do. So breaking news today, happening just as we speak. I mean, this information is just coming out in the last hour, that there's been another wave of electronic devices that are, let's say, engaged in spontaneous combustion while people are holding them or carrying them or whatever. The numbers are changing by the minute. We have at least in the hundreds of people who have had their feelings hurt, and we've had maybe a dozen or so who have shuffled off this mortal coil with a little help from their electronic device. The joke is that Hezbollah is going to have to change his name to just Hezbollah because they're taking the ball part out. And not to be too crass, but that's one of the jokes that's going around in Arab media. I mean, in Arab social media. This is something that people in Lebanon are repeating right now. So if you were to say that Hezbollah is reeling right now, you would be engaging in the height of understatement, because Hezbollah is beyond reeling at this point. People are probably, having jump scares from their toasters at this point. They're probably afraid to open their refrigerators. They're afraid to get on a motorbike. Some of the imagery that's coming out on Telegram, which of course I cannot share with you here, but which my son Nathan will shortly be putting up on chuckholton.com, is absolutely mind-boggling. There are videos, for example, where somebody's just pointing the camera at the outside of an apartment building, and you're hearing pop, 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 and like popcorn inside the building. But it's not popcorn; it's electronic devices that are, like I said, doing their best impersonation of a firework, and so absolutely amazing what we've found. Let's back up to what happened yesterday. Yesterday, there were something like 3,000 of these detonations inside Lebanon. And most of them were while somebody was carrying a device on their person. And they were specifically a beeper or a pager that was apparently made in Taiwan, shipped through a Hungarian firm, and sold to Hezbollah after Hassan Nasrallah, the commander there, told everybody to stop using cell phones because cell phones are, too easy to track. The Mossad very likely is inside the cell phone networks there, and so they can listen in on all your phone calls. They can see where you are. They can do all kinds of things with a smartphone or even a dumb phone. So Hassan Nasrallah, about, I don't know, a year ago, told everybody, stop using cell phones. We got to do something else. And wouldn't you know it, right about that time, somebody offered to sell them a secure network of pagers that would allow them to communicate. And these pagers communicate off of the cellular network. They don't connect to the same network as your cell phone does. So what then happened, apparently, is that the Mossad got in the middle of the supply chain and was able to redirect these shipments of pagers and then in place a plastic. When I say plastique, what I'm talking about is a plastic explosive. I'm just going to say that once. Plastique called PETN, and it's very powerful. And what they did was they apparently pasted a thin layer that amounted to about the weight of 20 paper clips on the back of the battery, and then closed the pagers back up and sealed them back up in their boxes and sent them on their way. That was 5.5 months ago. And these guys have been carrying these things around and using them for that entire time. Now, it also stands to reason that the Mossad, if they got access to these things, was not simply going to booby trap them. They were going to likely, at least on some of them, install some sort of software or something that would allow them to listen in or to read the messages that are going back and forth on this supposedly secure network. That would explain why Israel has sort of been one step ahead of Hezbollah almost the whole time, as they would be about to do some kind of shenanigans against Israel, and then all of a sudden they would find themselves spontaneously combusting due to a unmanned aerial platform that's hovering overhead that belongs to the Israelis. That gave the Israelis an incredible leg up. But apparently they have more, because what we're finding now is that today a second wave of these events is taking place with other electronic devices, specifically walkie-talkie style radios and other communication gadgets. Now, you can imagine that Hezbollah is so freaked out at this point, not just Hezbollah, anybody in Lebanon. As a matter of fact, I'm staying away from my cellular phone at this point. And you can imagine that there are rumors flying that it's iPhones, it's Motorola's, it's Samsung's, it's everything. Like, they don't even know, because what if a guy had his walkie-talkie and his cell phone in his backpack, and all of a sudden his backpack had a premature grand finale and just went kablooey, and he assumed that it was his iPhone and not so what I'm saying is there's so much confusion. Hezbollah is in absolute chaos right now. Not only have they likely had at least 10% of their entire fighting force taken off the battlefield, no longer owning one of these, but they have, it's continuing to happen. And they can't trust anything at this point. I would not be surprised to see them carrying around pigeons to communicate with, or resorting to smoke signals or something at this point. But if they wanted to resort to smoke signals, I have a feeling the Israeli Air Force would be happy to assist them in starting the fires. So these devices have been activated all across Lebanon, a second wave of them, and hundreds of freshly wounded people. And some of these devices that were activated went off at the funerals of people who died yesterday when the first wave of devices were activated. And you've probably seen the videos of those funerals. They're all often very crowded, very chaotic, people packed in, shoulder to shoulder. And then all of a sudden, obviously, these people are friends of the Smurf, the extremist that went to meet his maker with a little help from the Mossad. And so there's a good chance that a lot of the people in the crowd themselves have one of these devices that is in the second wave. And so boom, 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 boom. Let's just say that a bunch of, godless heathens are being turned into holy men tonight in Lebanon. And this is, the talk has been all about the fact that this is an absolute coup on the part of the Mossad and the IDF. The yesterday's by itself managed to take out, in terms of wounding, 3,000 or so, almost 3,000, they say, people that were Hezbollah or affiliated with Hezbollah, including the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon and some other important people. So it's staggering now to see a second wave of these. And it makes, of course, everybody, and especially Hezbollah, wonder, is there a third wave and a fourth wave and a fifth wave? And how long can they keep this going? Now, there are reports that there are planes from the IAF in the air over Lebanon. And that could mean something and it could not mean something. It could just be intended to continue the psychological operations against Hezbollah by sowing more confusion, more chaos. As a matter of fact, some of these events that happen today, because the walkie-talkies are larger and probably had larger charges on the inside of them. And so instead of just popping and making somebody lose some fingers or something, they were blowing or causing fires in apartment buildings and melting down motorbikes and things like that. Some of the pictures are mind-blowing of the damage. And so people are just, they don't know what to do. And they're actually thinking, when some guy on his motorbike just spontaneously combusts, they're thinking that it's a drone strike, but it's not. And so Israel is giving them a little more to talk about by flying jets very low, very fast, breaking the sound barrier over southern Lebanon and even up into Beirut. Now, that may signal that they're preparing, they may very shortly be starting a ground incursion into southern Lebanon. And I said last night, it would be crazy for them to miss this opportunity, because while they have their enemy reeling, and at this point, they're beyond reeling. At this point, they're catatonic. They have no idea what to even do next. And if the Israelis don't take advantage of that to accomplish the goal that they just laid down in writing as a objective for this conflict for them, which is to return their people to their homes in the north sooner rather than later, it would be malfeasance. It would be military malfeasance of the highest order for them not to take advantage of this and go in and strike while the iron is hot. In this case, literally. We'll talk about this in a minute. Programmer X asks, does the UN voting today to tell Israel to get out of Gaza or the West Bank matter? Yes, it does matter, and we will talk about that here. I'll talk about that here in a second. So let's just finish up on this. Obviously, this is something that Israel has been planning for some time, for at least 6 months, because the pagers have been in service for 5.5. So if that's the case, they have been meticulously putting together the pieces of this operation for half a year or more. And I cannot imagine that this is a one-off. It just wouldn't make any sense at all for Israel to let this go by and then sit back and wait for whatever retaliation the remnants of Hezbollah want to come up with. I will eat my hat if they don't go in the next, well, I'm thinking days, let's say maybe a week or two, but if in a week, the momentum will be gone. And so just from a purely tactical and strategic standpoint, unless they have some other tricks up their sleeve, and they very well may, then they would be absolutely crazy not to take the next step and start pushing people out. Now, Yoav Gallant, who is, defense minister, he's a war hero in Israel. He's been involved in some of the most dangerous and audacious operations that the IDF Special Forces and counterterrorism units have ever come up with, ever since the early 1980s. Former general in the IDF, and he has been sideways with Benjamin Netanyahu ever since, even before the war. He's had a lot of disagreements with Netanyahu, and for that reason, Yoav Gallant may himself get fired here shortly by Netanyahu, because Netanyahu's trying to preserve the very slim majority they have in the Knesset. I think they have 62 seats out of 120. And so even though Yoav Gallant is a member of the Likud party, which is same as Benjamin Netanyahu, and he has always been known as a hawk when it comes to war, when it comes to fighting their enemies, he has disagreed vehemently with Netanyahu recently over what to do and how to do it, when to do it in this conflict. And I say all that to say that as they made this decision, 3 days ago, to update their objectives for the conflict in writing, and to add to that we have to be able to send people back to their homes in the north. He came out shortly after that meeting ended and said, there is no way to accomplish that objective without the use of military force. So I want to help you put that in perspective here. Yoav Gallant, who has been a vocal voice for ceasefire negotiations, for doing whatever necessary, including making concessions in order to get the remaining living hostages out of Gaza, came out after this meeting and said, yeah, there's no solution that doesn't include the military option. Now, we're at a point where there is no diplomatic solution to this conflict in the north. We have to go in militarily. So the next day, Operation Below the Belt commenced. I don't know if they're really calling it that, but that's kind of what's being bandied about on the internet, that they're calling it Operation Below the Belt. But whatever they're calling it, it was spectacularly successful, incredibly precise, very low collateral damage in terms of civilian casualties. There were a few likely, but very low. This is the kind of thing that you think about what other military choices, strategies, options they would have had to use to take a tenth, to take more than 3,000 of Hezbollah's total force. That's more than what I've been saying, a tenth. That's way more than a tenth. Because, no, I'm sorry. It's 3,000 offline, and they say Hezbollah has something like 45,000, and then sometimes they'll claim they have 100 to 150,000. I want to get into that in just a second, but let me finish this thought. Suffice it to say that any other way they could have pursued to take that many Hezbollah guys off the battlefield would have involved massive collateral damage and civilian casualties. So doing it this way created a unbelievable dilemma for Hezbollah, because if they had put enough PTN in those cell phones to delete all of the extremists who was holding one, rather than just maim them or hurt their feelings very badly, if they had done that, and those guys were all meeting Allah at this point, they would not be any more trouble to the organization that is Hezbollah. But by wounding them, by hurting their feelings very badly, what the Israelis have been able to do is now take even more than 3,000 of them off the table, because there's a lot more who have to take care of those 3,000, who have to drive them to the hospital and put them in the ambulance, and have to try to run around and communicate now, because they're going to have to communicate with runners at this point. It is a masterstroke, because wounding your enemy is much better than killing him. Why? Because if you wound somebody, you actually take 3 people out of the fight, because it takes 2 people to carry a wounded guy. If you delete him completely, then it doesn't take anybody else except that one guy. You're only taking one guy out. So there's a good chance that they have crippled Hezbollah's ability to function for the time being. And this is why I keep saying it would be insane for them not to capitalize on that and go the next step. So let's talk, first of all, I want to go back and answer this programmer guy's questions about, does the UN voting today telling Israel to get out of Gaza or the West Bank matter? So if you didn't hear about that, what happened was the United Nations, the Palestinian envoy to the United Nations, who is not a full voting member. Okay, he's an observer that has been allowed, this is unprecedented. There are no other, except the Vatican, there are no other countries on planet Earth or non-country people groups on planet Earth who have an observer seat in the United Nations. If they were going to start handing those out, if they're going to be fair, they should give them to the Kurds for sure. And they should probably give them to several people groups in Burma. And there's lots and lots of other people groups like that around the world. The Yazidis should have it. There's lots of people around the world that should have that. But they gave it just to the Palestinians. And it doesn't allow them to vote on anything, but it does allow them to bring motions to be voted on. And so this is a problem, because now what's the first thing they bring to the table and bring up for a vote is that is a motion that would attempt to force Israel to completely leave its lands in Judea, Samaria, and the Hebron, and in Gaza. So if they were to pass this, and Israel obviously would ignore it, but if they didn't ignore it, if they somehow were compelled to abide by it through sanctions or whatever, then what would happen would be the 500,000 Israeli citizens who live in Judea and Samaria, what they call the West Bank and Hebron, would be forced to leave their homes behind, and they would be internally displaced, basically refugees in their own country. the troops that are in Gaza would have to pull out immediately. So the Palestinian envoy brought this up for a vote in the United Nations, and that's supposed to happen here in the next day or two. So that's what they're saying. Now, does it matter? Not to Israel. Israel certainly won't abide by it. There's no way. There is no way. They are not going to pull their 500,000 citizens out of their existing homes and villages in Judea and Samaria and the Hebron. They're not going to do it. That's not going to happen. That is a non-starter extraordinaire. Okay, so just forget about that. Now, is it going to be used as a bludgeon to whack Israel over the head politically in the world, on the world stage? Yes, absolutely, of course, it will, just like everything else. And is that right? No, it's completely immoral that they would allow something like that to happen in the UN. It's immoral. It is wrong, and it is getting harder for me to feel bad for Israel because Israel basically refuses to engage in the information battle space in a meaningful way that would allow them to actually make some progress against that, defending against these kinds of, let's just call them international or global diplomacy theater. That's what we're seeing in the UN. It's global diplomacy theater, right? So the reports of pagers in other countries going off, Ben Todd, are true. There have been reports of these going off in Syria. I don't know about Iraq. I thought I read something about a few going off in Iraq. And the article I read about one of them that went off in Syria was that there were 4 guys in one car, and the car was carrying a whole bunch of other materials that can happen to be quite flammable. And the entire car went up like a mushroom cloud because if you have a device with a small amount of PETN or plastic or C4 or something like that in it, and they call that a blasting cap, and that's what they use to set off other larger devices like whatever. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details because that'll break my that'll get me demonetized. But so these military created manufactured blasting caps have a small amount in them that then gets an electrical charge from either a clacker, we used to call it, a 9-volt battery, or some other device that like in the cartoons where they have the thing and they push the Wile E. Coyote pushes the handle down and causes a kablooey somewhere. One of those, right? Those things create an electrical charge, which then causes the blasting cap to go pop. And normally that wouldn't do anything. But if that blasting cap is close enough, like touching a larger amount of plastique, then that larger amount of plastique is going to sympathetically detonate. And that is what likely happened in that car that became a barbecue in Syria. Those 4 guys in there were likely carrying these devices, and the devices somehow catastrophically overheated and all at once. And because they were riding in a car that was filled with other things that might be liable to catastrophically, turn into confetti, the whole car turned into confetti. And that's what happened. So yes, it is happening in other countries as well, because now I just want to point out these beepers that they were carrying around for 5.5 months. How many of these pagers have flown on airplanes? I mean, I can't imagine none of them have. It would be, I would imagine There have been hundreds of these beepers on an airplane up in the sky at some point. And I just want to know, how did the Mossad, if they indeed did this, how did the Mossad have the ability to ensure that there weren't any of those beepers on an airplane at the very moment that they hit the key that caused those things to turn to confetti and avoid having a plane fall out of the sky or something like that? Have you thought about that? Holy cow. And it just gives you a sense of just how good the Mossad can be when they really put their minds to it. And I say it that way because they haven't always been good. They have made some absolutely terrible mistakes in their history. They have really stepped in it from time to time and accidentally taken out civilians when they were trying to take out targets. They've misidentified targets. There was a guy who was a janitor and through a terrible stroke of luck happened to look a little bit like the bad person that the Mossad was trying to delete. And so they saw the janitor walk by and was like, that was him. And they pushed the button and the janitor went on his way to meet his maker. And they haven't always been as good as they appear to be now, but they've learned. And one of the things that they have made a centerpiece of their policies is to be clever, to be sneaky. And this is the ultimate. They are going to be studying this event in war colleges and, classes like that, military schools, West Point, for eternity. This is going to reset the bar for what they call asymmetrical warfare. Asymmetric warfare is just warfare by other means rather than just kinetic conventional forces. And this resets the bar for that, for sure. So thank you, B. Walker. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say that. I carry an Apollo pager right now and work on night shift. Small and AAA battery run, that's it. Carolyn, I wouldn't put it in my pocket. No, I'm kidding. These ones were obviously intercepted and were tampered with, and it wouldn't have any bearing on other pagers made by the same company. I don't think that's it. Somebody just said in the comments that he saw that there are home solar energy systems that are overheating and combusting now in Beirut, Lebanon, according to reports. It just makes you wonder how many things like I said, these guys, Hezbollah, they're going to be throwing out their vibrating toothbrush. They're going to be throwing out their refrigerators, their stoves, Game Boys, everything. Like, holy cow. These guys, when, you've heard the term to, quote, bomb people back to the Stone Age, unquote. And I've heard that bandied about my whole career. But in this particular event, they've probably come closer to actually doing that than any other conflict in history, just simply because Hezbollah is going to voluntarily rejoin the Stone Age because they're going to be afraid of anything with a power cord or a battery from now on. Can you imagine some of the high-ranking officials in Hezbollah in Beirut that might actually own a Tesla or something? Do you think what do you think they're thinking when they walk up to that car now? Like, holy smokes, incredible. Okay, I wanted to talk about one other thing here. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. That's very, very nice of you. Pop goes the weasel. G. Okay, good. Okay, so now let's move on. Let me just get over here. So a report just came out This is on Israel Hayom, which is a kind of like a Fox News in Israel, that Israel activated the pagers ahead of schedule due to operational security. And so they had initially planned to use these some other time during a full-scale conflict. But apparently Hezbollah, maybe somebody happened to have their pager break open or found it or something, and the Mossad got word that, oh, we're going to be found out, and so we better do it now. It makes sense that they did it early because I was thinking about this today. The IDF just announced today that Israel is going to move their 98th Division out of the Gaza Strip and move it up to the northern front. These are elite, it's an elite paratroopers, commando division, is going to join the 36th Division, which is already in the north, under the Northern Command, after months of being in Gaza. Well, if they had planned this out like a military operation, they would have already had all of the troops in place that they needed to go into Lebanon before they set off this preemptive strike. And so, I was reading this article today about them moving the 98th Division up to the north now and going like, wait, something's off here. That doesn't make sense. Why would they not have done this weeks ago so that they could be there and be ready for this upcoming operation, which everybody pretty much assumes is going to happen at this point, to go into Lebanon? And so the report coming out of Israel Hayom saying that Israel had planned to use these only at the start of a full-scale conflict, but was compromised, and so they decided to act and to set them off immediately. And that probably is why we're seeing a second wave of other kinds of devices, because this is likely, this kind of an operation, this covert pager, inserting PETN or some other boom boom sauce into anything that's electronic, likely has been an operation that has been years in the making, not months in the making. It's just too well put together for it to have gone off in, just overnight. So if it's been years in the making, and there are apparently solar panels and not just cellular phones, but walkie-talkies and all this other stuff going off, if all of these things are just turning into a ticker tape parade all of a sudden, it likely means that Israel is saying, okay, they've figured out this thing that we've been putting in place for a long time. They figured it out. We've got to use it or we're going to lose it, because they're going to be going through, you can bet, anything. I mean, yeah, I bet the sales of those little greeting cards that you open up and they sing you a little song are going to plummet in Lebanon, because people are going to be afraid of, battery-powered greeting cards at this point. So they're just saying, we might as well just push the button on everything and set it all off. So that's an interesting report. It indicates that they had these different levels of weaponized devices. And apparently they realized that Hezbollah had potentially uncovered some of these devices. And so the report says that an intense deliberation ensued within Israeli security circles, and they opted for swift action. And so you talk about creating a mass casualty event. Again, just think of what they get out of this, what the Israelis get out of this. Hezbollah is in complete disarray. People are afraid to talk to each other anything other than face-to-face. They are uh, completely overwhelmed in their hospitals. They're out of medical supplies. They're using up, in Lebanon, it's just absolute chaos. But not only that, like I mentioned last night, now the IDF and Mossad gets to watch what's happening. And they've got a lot of human intelligence assets in Lebanon that can tell them what's going on. They're probably hacked into all kinds of security cameras. As a matter of fact, in the past, the Mossad has been very good at just setting up their own networks of security cameras in entire neighborhoods, wiring whole neighborhoods up with security cameras in Lebanon in order to be able to track the targets that they wanted to track. And so you can imagine that they are making, very good use of those other assets right now to watch what's going on and take very copious notes about who got hurt, where they were, what they were doing, what kind of vehicle they were riding. Just everything about, especially the ones that are in Syria and other places. You can imagine just the sheer amount of intelligence that Israel is gleaning from this operation. It just boggles the mind. It really does. Beebins, how do you find the information before us? Well, I'm 9 hours ahead of you, so I'm awake while you're sleeping. That helps. And I have first source and second source places that I go for reporting, meaning like, for example, Hezbollah's own Telegram channel, which is in Arabic. Some of the IDF's Telegram channels, or Israeli Telegram channels, which are in Hebrew, and so I have to translate everything. And then I follow local media in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. Okay, so I have sources in those places, because just like in the United States, things typically get reported first in either social media or in local media, local news sources, before they make national or international news. And so as a journalist, I go and I compile a list of sources and have algorithms and other things like that using AI in place that will help me sift through all that information, translate things into English, and get the nitty gritty, so to speak, out of what I'm reading. So that's so if you want to, have access to some of that stuff, I can have it put up over at chuckholton.com. And so go to chuckholton.com and subscribe over there. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. You can sign up to support for $7 a month if you like, and try to keep me in the field, try to help me sort of break my our dependency on YouTube. For those of you that haven't done this yet, just so you know, Locals, which that's where chuckholton.com points to my page on locals.com. Locals is a subsidiary of Rumble. So if you go to sign up over there and you get redirected to Rumble, that's why, because you get an account with Rumble and then you'll automatically have an account with Locals, and you get this 2 for 1. Okay. But again, doesn't cost anything. And it's because I cannot put a lot of information up on YouTube because of their rules, their community guidelines. And a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is too graphic. It's, whatever. I put it up over at chuckholton.com so that if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can go over there and look at it. You can also follow me on my Telegram channel, which is just called The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. And I forward things over there that I'm going to be talking about later on later lives. So I'm not necessarily posting new stuff all the time over there that I'm gleaning from my sources. What I'm doing is I'm combing through other Telegram channels and just uploading or forwarding topics or articles that I want to refer to or remember when I go to do a live. Because if you haven't noticed, I do most of this reporting on, as I'm live here, I do most of it ad lib. I don't have a script. I'm not reading off a script. I will sometimes make notes that I will refer to, but most of it's coming right out of here. And because of that, I sort of aggregate information through Telegram, Twitter, and local news media, and then sources that I have, people that I know that I've met in Israel or in Ukraine or in other places around the world. So, for example, on the Houthi event that took place just several days ago, which the whole world's already pretty much forgotten about, where the Houthis managed to get a missile into Israeli airspace for the first time. There are some people that I would reach out to who are experts in missile technology, in things like that, shipping in the Bab al-Mandab Strait. I recently interviewed Sal Mercogliano from a podcast that I watch. It's all about shipping, or it's called "What's Going On with Shipping." Sorry, and he's an expert on logistics and things like that. So when I want to know more about these things, I go to the people who do know more. And my job as a journalist is not to know everything sort of ipso facto without having, just knowing it inherently. It's to aggregate information from a lot of sources and bring them to you in a way that is easy for you to understand. That's the true job of a journalist. And I think part of the reason why these long form lives that I do are so popular, because this YouTube channel punches far above its weight in terms of the number of people who watch it. And I think it's for two reasons. Number one, a lot of people have cut the cord, and so they don't have a TV channel to go turn on and to watch when there's breaking news, because they just watch Netflix now and they don't really need 200 channels of nothing on cable. And so when something immediate does happen that they want to get informed about, they go looking for a live stream on YouTube for that, and they find me. That's one reason. The other reason that I think that it's so that this particular channel is so popular is just simply because it's not produced. It's not polished. It's just me sharing with you what I have learned about these conflicts, being on the ground here. At the moment, I'm in Armenia, but I just came last week from Israel, and I'm heading next week right back to Israel. So what I have learned on the ground, sharing it with you like we're sitting across the table from each other at dinner. And you're being subjected to some guy who just won't shut up and just talks and talks and talks. But hopefully what he's talking about is interesting enough that you want to keep listening. And so please hit the like button. It really does help YouTube know that this is worth watching and that people want to see it. I can't help but hope that that would help YouTube in its decisions whether or not to demonetize my account, which they keep doing. The 2-minute update I uploaded today, immediately demonetized. Just like, here I put all this work into making this stuff, and then YouTube immediately just makes it so that I cannot get paid for it because, I said the wrong word. It's just so frustrating. So I'm scrolling down here to look for some other questions before we get to the next thing. Okay, so I made it to the bottom. Good, made it all the way to the bottom. And I do like it when you ask me questions. I mean, when you engaging with me is the best part of these things, because I feel like I'm actually talking to somebody. I'm not just staring into the unblinking Sauron eye of my MacBook camera with nobody on the other end, which I'm kind of used to doing because I've been talking to a camera now for 22 years. But it is incredibly encouraging and helpful to have people engaging and asking questions back and forth. Evangel Greek says, question, what about the UN force in Blue Line? Not an obstacle for Israeli incursion? No, not at all. Those guys certainly have not been an obstacle for Hezbollah incursion. You're talking about the UNIFIL, the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. That interim force in Lebanon was put in place in 1973 and has been there ever since. And their whole purpose in life, the whole reason for them being there, was for them to ensure that Hezbollah and Israel left each other alone, and specifically that under the United Nations Resolution 1701, that Hezbollah stayed behind the Litani River, which is 10 miles or so from the border with Israel. They obviously have not done that. There's incontrovertible evidence that Hezbollah basically owns UNIFIL, that they even benefit in many ways from the U.S. tax dollars, about $300 million a year that go to pay for UNIFIL to be there. Those are not American troops, obviously, but the troops that are there with the blue helmets are from places like Ireland, Sri Lanka, and believe it or not, right now, even China has Chinese army forces in Lebanon. And you can imagine that those guys probably are not standing up to Hezbollah in any way, shape, or form. If anything, they're passing information along to Hezbollah. So I don't think that Israel would let them be any kind of stumbling block to them going in. Oscar probably could come back to Israel, Patsy. He would just have to raise the money to do it, because Oscar is 100% self-funded in his reporting. And so if you want him to come, go over and donate to Oscar. That'd be good. Thank you for thinking I'm hilarious. I'm not trying to be hilarious. I'm just trying to be creative so that I don't get demonetized. Are other channels like CBN, TBN, Israel Guys, etc. getting demonetized? Yes, they are. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with the guys from Israel Guys. We drove up there with me and Oscar and visited the guys at Yoav, and they were just telling us how their stuff is just getting demonetized left and right, and I feel bad for them about that. I don't know about TBN. I did meet with Yair Pinto the other day and interviewed him. You can see the interview on my YouTube page here by just scrolling back in the videos of a week or two. And that was a very interesting interview with Yair Pinto from TBN. And Eric Stakelbeck from TBN is also a friend. I haven't talked to him recently, but I need to, and I'm going to get him on my podcast. We're going to do a joint podcast together about this and have a conversation about all the things that are going on. So maybe I'll ask him that question when we get together. Eric Stakelbeck and I go way back. We both have worked for CBN for 2 decades, and then Eric, several years ago, went over to TBN. So when will somebody see David's DNA and hear Prince of Peace's voice? Can you please talk with Solution? Stops all this sin war. Okay, none of that made any sense, so sorry, not a question. What would happen if Nasrallah got injured or hurt in this attack? Very good question, Vladimir. You can bet that, especially after yesterday, he's not being allowed near anything with a power cord or a battery. But on the off chance that he did get injured by this, you can imagine the hue and cry from the remnants of Hezbollah. And whether or not he gets hurt, I think that it is a very good bet that Israel will get hit directly by Iran in the very near future. And Iran is sort of waiting because they expect that Israel is about to go into Lebanon, and they're waiting for the day that Israel crosses into Lebanon and begins that ground operation in order to strike from Iran to keep this, to try to knock Israel off balance as it's focusing on the north. Whether or not that works is another story, because if I can think of it, that the Mossad has thought of it, and the Mossad has proven several times in the very recent past that they are very deeply embedded in the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in in Iran. And so what happened in Lebanon, very similar things could likely happen soon in Iran. And that is if they haven't happened already. And so you can bet that not only is everybody in Lebanon distancing themselves from their technology at this point, but that everybody in Iran is doing the same thing, at least among the bad people. Okay. So very good question there. Thank you for asking that. Okay. One more thing I wanted to cover before we get out of here. And it has to do with, no, not grocery rationing. Oh, one other thing I wanted to ask one more time. I said yesterday that I would be willing to do a live about how to be best prepared for what happens the day after the elections that are coming up in November here in the United States. You know, I have to be careful about my wording of this because, you know, of YouTube's community standards. But, you know, there is a very real possibility that the people who are best prepared after the election will fare better than those who are not prepared for whatever happens after the election, no matter who gets elected. Okay. But I think that it would be very prescient. It would be very smart of you to prepare yourself for what might happen after the election. But as I, again, just even mentioning it to you, and please don't post things like that, Cynthia, in the chat, because I'm afraid, again, that this may, you know, get your comment might actually get this thing in trouble. So the thing that concerns me is that I have to be so circumspect about my language talking about this kind of stuff on YouTube that it would probably be easier for me to do this live over on Locals, where I can say whatever I need to say. And so what would you prefer is my question. If I'm going to do a live about how to best prepare yourself for, you know, what comes next after the US elections, would you rather that I do that live on Locals, or would you rather that I do it on YouTube and have to be really, really, really cautious about what I'm saying? What would you prefer? I personally would prefer to do it over on Locals, but there's just not that many people there. You know, we've got 100 and something thousand here on YouTube and like 13,000 that are subscribers over on Locals. So if you guys all want to go over to Locals and subscribe over there, then please do that. And that'll be my cue that it's okay to do lives over there. And it looks like a lot of you are saying Locals. Shirley Scott says YouTube, but looks like Coach Wendy says both. Now, maybe what we could do is well, you're saying I can't afford Locals. You don't have to pay. You just have to subscribe. There is a way you can pay if you want to support me, but just so you understand, you can subscribe to Locals for free. It's just like subscribing to YouTube. Just get a username. It's on Rumble. It'll redirect you to Rumble. It doesn't cost anything. It's just like signing up for YouTube. You can, there's a free option. Okay. So if you go and you subscribe to chuckholton.locals.com, again, it's going to push you over to Rumble to get subscribed. But yeah, and I kind of feel the way you do, Anna. Like I hate having accounts everywhere in the world, but again, you know, it's just like how committed are you? You know, how much do you want to get this information? And you can, all you have to do is just get an account there. Just, you know, put your name in, get a username and all that. It doesn't cost anything. But some of you are, I mean, it looks like many of you are saying you would rather, yeah, if you have a Rumble account already, then you just go to Locals and you should be able to sign in with your Rumble account because they're one and the same. They're both owned by the same people. But if you, it looks like, are okay with that, maybe what we'll do, how about just to sort of, you know, split the difference here, I will do the uncensored live over on locals or Rumble, and then I will do a sort of scaled down version, a censored version of that over on YouTube for those of you who just are not willing to go and sign up on locals, okay? So let's, yeah, okay, all right, okay. Thank you for answering my question on that. I appreciate that. They are demonetizing others, James. I've heard from a lot of people that are being demonetized. My friend Tim Miller, for example, you know, he's trying to help people be safer, help them keep their families safer with his YouTube channel. And almost every one of his videos gets demonetized just because he's talking about, you know, real life events where things happen, bad things happen to people. And he's trying to teach you how not to have that happen to you, but he has to talk about the event that did happen, and he just, boom, he gets demonetized. And YouTube is getting worse and worse and worse. I just got an email from them that said that they are going to change their way. And if I don't self-report, you know, like I think I'm just telling the news, I'm not using profanity, I'm not using graphic language, we're talking about serious subjects, we're talking about wars, crisis, and things like that, right? But I'm doing it in a professional way that you could have your kids in the room, and I'm not gonna, you know, bother them a whole lot unless they're, you know, super young. But now they're saying if I don't self-report all of my videos as being inappropriate, then I'm going to get demonetized completely. And it's just like, really? So I have to basically, you want me to keep working and you want me to volunteer not to get paid for that rather than rolling the dice every time and at least having a chance of getting paid? That's what you're saying? And I would love to just go do it over on Rumble, but I would literally be doing the same thing. I'd be making zero money because there's not enough people on Rumble yet to make a living over there on YouTube. I met a guy today at a caravanserai, you know, a 13th century Motel 6 by the side of the Silk Road here in Armenia. And we met a guy who's a YouTuber that is traveling the world, going to every country on planet Earth in alphabetical order over the course of several years. And so we got talking, and I was like, how are you funding that? Because he hasn't even started putting out those videos yet. And he said, oh, well, we started another YouTube channel that has done really well. And so we're taking the money from that, and we are, you know, doing this. We're traveling the world for 7 years, you know, just making videos. That's the kind of thing you can make on YouTube. People can make enough money on YouTube to live on. You can't do that on Rumble. You just can't. So because of that, I'm trying to, you know, do my best to get people over to locals where then if you like my reporting, you can actually subscribe, and not just subscribe for free, but maybe later on when you can afford it, if you can afford it, go ahead and support the channel so that I can get to the point where we just can make the news we want to make, go where we want to go or where you want me to go, and tell the stories that need to be told, regardless of whether or not Newsmax or CBN or anybody else wants me to go there. Right now, I can pretty much only go to the places where they send me because they are my paycheck. And this is a, you know, sort of a side gig, right? So that's how that works. Okay. Daniel Visan asks, has Israel captured much ammunition? Are there a number of minorities in Iran and neighboring countries that use all that ammunition and distract the focus of Tehran? Any thoughts? No. I think I understand what you're saying, Daniel, and that is, you know, can Israel send their captured ammunition over to some like rebel groups in Iran? They have done things like that in the past. That was what the Iran-Contra affair was all about. But I haven't heard anything. I don't think that they're doing that now. One Tired Mama or Nathan, could one of you put up the link, please, to the locals page? Some people are asking for the link here. I see that here. Do I get notifications on locals? Yes, you do. You can sign up for notifications on there. Again, it's free. What about an app? I could perhaps do an app if I'd probably need to at least double the number of subscribers on YouTube on locals that I've got in order to make it financially feasible to run an app, because to get an app up costs money and to maintain it costs money. So maybe that's something that we're looking into our options right now, because again, as a lot of my friends are getting demonetized who are making content on YouTube, all of us are starting to look around and go, what can we do to salvage this if YouTube decides that it just doesn't like us at all anymore? Okay. So yeah, YouTube puts all these advertisements up and then demonetizes my video, and then they keep all the advertising revenue. You got to like that, right? Oh, that Nathan, sorry, the link, post the link, please, to, oh, never mind. Rissa got it. Never mind. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. So just to reiterate, a second wave of attacks, a second wave of events has happened inside Lebanon today, after over 3,000 electronic devices spontaneously combusted yesterday in Lebanon. Today, a bunch more just had that happen. Different kinds of devices. They're saying devices such as walkie-talkies, maybe even solar panels, things like that, that are all just spontaneously combusting. And it's creating absolute chaos across Lebanon and Syria. People are absolutely terribly afraid of their electronic devices. You could walk around with a walkie-talkie and just hold it out to people, and they probably would scream and run away at this point. Throw a pager at somebody and then run off. There have been any number of memes that have been put out about that are, making fun of that. But it is a serious business. I mean, this is an absolute coup on the part of the Israelis, and it has greatly diminished, if not crippled, their enemies, Hezbollah. And so all of this is pointing very clearly to an imminent operation on the ground with IDF troops inside Lebanon in the very, very near future. So you may not be hearing that anywhere else, but I'm going to tell you right now that it is very highly likely that you're going to see that operation kick off very soon. It may just have to do with how soon can that 96th Battalion get from Gaza up to the north. That would likely take a week or even two. And again, this report that just came out said that the activation of these devices inside Lebanon likely was kicked off earlier than originally planned by Israel, because they believed that they were being compromised, that they were being found out, and they didn't want to lose that ability to throw their enemy into chaos. And so they just are pushing the button on everything they've got inside Lebanon right now. And that creates the perfect conditions on the ground for them to go in and finish the job militarily. So this is extremely likely to happen in the very near future, okay? Now, obviously, the United States is pushing very hard against this and trying to get Israel to back off, and they're like, look, it's okay that you want to do this, just please don't do it before the elections, because it'll make it harder for Kamala to get elected if you guys go in now. And like I said yesterday, that's a double-edged sword. The United States might be wielding that sword against Israel, but Israel's saying, oh, if that can cut me, it can cut you too, because that means that if we decide to go in now, we might actually be able to, in some sense, influence the election in the United States and make it more likely that one of the candidates gets elected over the other. And so it's almost like the United States is trying to, threaten Israel with this, but Israel's got the same threat coming right back at them. So look, we've been praying since this war began, October 7th, that that God would cause Israel's enemies' attacks to falter and fail, that he would cause them to not be able to agree with one another on how best to go about it or when to attack, and that he would cause their own missiles and rockets to come back on their own heads, and that the violence that they planned against their enemies would be visited on them instead. And that's exactly what has happened. This is what we're seeing here. I mean, if you're one of those people that's like, I don't get all this religious stuff. I get it. I get it. I mean, you can't send God an email and get an email response. But let me tell you something. This is an answer to prayer. God answers prayers. And so the one thing that all of us ought to be doing when it comes to this conflict and all the others is we should be praying for the people involved. We should be praying. If we don't know what side is the right side to be on, all we have to do is pray that God would thwart the plans of evil men and give wisdom and discernment to to the righteous men in that conflict. And then just trust God to take care of it. We are seeing biblical prophecy playing out before our eyes. And you know me, I don't get too deep into that stuff, but it is undeniable that we are a step closer today than we were 2 days ago to seeing prophecy fulfilled inside the state of Israel. I have people that I know, fellow journalists, they will swear up and down that Israel is not going to survive this. I'm telling you, there are a half a dozen references in the Bible that say otherwise, that say that Israel will not be destroyed ever again. And so we should continue to pray. And I would say, let's do that right now as we close, okay? Lord God, I want to come to you right now, and I just want to beg for your mercy on the people of Israel. I want to beg for your mercy and your grace on people in Lebanon. There are many of our Christian brothers and sisters who are there, and they are going to have to suffer through whatever comes next. Lord, I pray that you would be with the Christians who are still left in Gaza, and that you would even show yourself to those who are not believers. You would answer our prayer to appear to people in dreams and visions if there is nobody to come and to tell them about the good news of Christ Jesus. And Lord, I pray that you would continue to uphold Israel with your righteous right hand, even if there are many people in the Israeli government who are not righteous. There are many people in the Israeli government who are on the wrong side in terms of their politics, in terms of their worldview, in terms of their paganism. I've seen so much hubris and pride coming out of Israeli accounts on social media and elsewhere, Lord, and it just makes my heart sick. But in spite of those people, we pray, Lord, that you would uphold Israel with your righteous right hand, that you would make your prophecy come to pass in Israel, and that you would be glorified in it all and through it all. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Oh, okay.
Susan Munoz asks, when do you see your family?
Come here.
I'm right here.
Susan Munoz is asking when I see my family. Well, here's part of my family right here. My sweetheart. She's traveling with me here in Armenia, and my oldest son, Mason, and his wife, and their little baby, Ellie, and his wife is pregnant with grandbaby number 5. They're here with us as well, as is my son, Nathan, and his wife, Rabina, and their little baby. They're all here in Armenia with us right now, and so we're having a great time, and I just took an hour away from my grandbabies to spend it with you, so you better go hit that like button, because why else would I do that? If you're not going to hit if you can't even take the time to just subscribe and hit the like button, why would I take time away from my grandchildren to bring you the news, right? Okay, so thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a part of it.